The Annapolis Summit, the Bush administration's initiative to restart the peace process between Israel and the Palestinians, was dismissed by many as a photo op, but not by our guest today. Ghaith al-Omari is a former advisor to the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas. He believes that fundamental shifts are taking place in the region that hold out some hope that this set of negotiations will amount to more than just talk. Welcome, Mr. al-Omari.
Hello.
So what are these shifts that are taking place in the region that make you so confident that this peace process is going to be better than the others?
For one thing, actually, the fact that the parties are talking is in itself significant. There is a developing realization in Israel that the two-state solution is in Israel's strategic interest. Prime Minister Olmert himself said that quite recently on his way back from Annapolis. Then you have the regional context. You have the Arab states for the first time actually being part of the process. You have something called the Arab Peace Initiative that holds out the promise of normalization with Israel once there is a peace deal. There's an understanding that you have to change the security nature of the region to deal with issues like Iran, with issues like extremism. Then there is political need by President Abbas himself. The Palestinian people themselves are right now at a cross point. Either they go towards statehood through negotiation or towards continuation of chaos. And I think the situation is ripe for a deal right now.
Well, why do you think that those changes are taking place right now, especially among the Arab states and some of the authoritarian regimes? I mean, this is a decades-old peace process. The conflict is even longer than that. Why not in the past? Why now?
Two major things. First thing, the war in Iraq has changed the regional strategic formula, and Iran is emerging as a regional superpower that will be there for a long time to come. Whether with or without nuclear weapons, Iran will continue to be a regional issue that will have to be dealt with in the long term, and it can only be dealt with through a new regional security alliance. That's one. But also, right now, there is a clash of dialogues, of narratives within the Arab world and the Islamic world. One narrative represented by the Arab establishment says that diplomacy, relations with the West, actually can get you results. But another narrative that says only violence, only resistance can get you results. Recently, the war in Lebanon last summer, where Israel was seen to have lost to Hezbollah, the American losses in Iraq, and the Israeli withdrawal from Gaza, unilateral withdrawal, were seen as a validation of the point that violence pays. And these Arab regimes are on the defensive, and they need to show that their diplomacy, their way of dealing with things, their relation with the West are actually also productive. So there's an immediate domestic need for this kind of progress.
And what did Annapolis mean for ordinary Palestinians and for the Arab street? How did they see it?
With justified skepticism, been there, done that, we've seen it before, but also with anticipation. People are tired of violence, people are tired of lack of development, people are tired of poverty, and they have hope, but they also have skepticism. What I like about Annapolis, the positive thing is, it's a multi-layered process. We saw one event in Annapolis, but recently there was another event in Paris, where the financial aspect of peace was dealt with. And there's another
This is a donors conference where billions of dollars were pledged to rebuild the infrastructure of the Palestinian Authority, which has been badly damaged.
Badly damaged and also badly mismanaged. So it's a process of rebuilding and also reforming the governing structures. And the third leg of this process, we have a security process that's underway that will mean more security to the Israelis, but also more freedom of movement for the Palestinians. If these three go hand in hand in a parallel way, in a mutually reinforcing way, we will start seeing, I think, more traction for this process.
Well, we often hear about why security is important to that part of the world, and somehow economics tends to kind of get left out of the equation or kind of like pushed to the sideline. Why do you think that this particular donors conference is important? I mean, is it going to help stem the tide of militancy in the Arab Muslim world?
In and of itself, of course not. One of the biggest mistakes in the last few years is thinking that we can solve the regional problems through just dumping money into it. It doesn't work that way. Money is important to stabilize things. Money is important to create some hope. But money outside a political context means nothing. If people do not have hope of liberation, hope of statehood, then money which becomes nothing more than a sedative. Now, aid in itself also is only useful if it creates a sustainable economy. And if there's no security, if there's no investment environment, if there's no freedom of movement, which are all security issues, then aid will be nothing but humanitarian, will be nothing but a short-term fix. So aid has to come in as part of creating sustainable development. This can only happen if you have security, and these can only happen in the right political context.
So that's sort of a spin-off, if you like, from what happened in Annapolis. But what did Annapolis change? I mean, were the expectations properly defined, and were they realistic? I mean, we're talking about a Palestinian state by the end of this year.
We're talking about a peace deal by the end of this year. A state would take a longer time to build. But a peace deal is very achievable by the end of this year. I mean, 7 years of conflict, preceded by years of negotiation, has clearly defined the parameters of the end game between Palestinians and Israelis. We're going to have a Palestinian state on the 1967 borders, give or take, division of Jerusalem, refugees going back to the Palestinian state. We know the solutions right now. It's no longer a question of having to invent them from scratch. It's a question of having to build the political will to implement these solutions.
Yeah, well, the solutions are, as you say,
right.
well known. What do we do about Jerusalem, the return of Palestinian refugees, and what's going to constitute the borders of a future independent Palestinian state? But why has it been so important translating that into a political reality? And how might Annapolis change that?
Yes. When you have a process of dialogue, when you have a peace process, a process creates its own dynamics. A process creates opportunities. We know one thing for sure. If the two sides were not talking, they would be shooting at one another. We saw that in the last 7 years, and that was a failure. Now there is movement. I think after 7 years of conflict, both publics, Palestinian and Israeli, first are tired of conflict. Secondly, they've, I think, understood that violence will not get you your results. Israel will not destroy the Palestinian aspirations through violence, and the Palestinians, by using violence as well, will not break Israel's resolve. There, we've reached an impasse. Unilateralism has been tried by Israel and has failed, and there's a realization that you need to move forward. But now they have to shift gears toward a more intensive diplomacy, managing the day-to-day aspect of the process. Ultimately, the deal will have to be reached between Palestinians and Israelis. But the Americans are the only ones who can manage the two sides, manage crises, and provide the right incentive for both sides to move forward.
All right, Ghaith al-Omari, thank you very much for joining us on the program.
Thank you for having me.